Carla only has the best tech. Can't connect to network. But she didn't have the best internet. So she got Cox multi-gig speeds to power all her... Now, all her tech is... connected. Exactly. Step it up with multi-gig speeds. Available everywhere. Only from Cox. 2 gig download speeds. Individual speeds vary. See cox.com for details.
Hello and welcome to Outward, Slate's LGBTQ podcast. I'm Bryan Louder, an editor at Slate. This week, as we stumble out of the haze of the holidays and into the nightmarish light of the second Trump presidential term, we thought we could all use a bit of guidance, a friendly helping hand, maybe even a swift kick in the pants. So we're having an advice show. I'm joined today by 2 excellent co-advisors, my insightful co-host, Christina Carterucci. Hello, Christina.
Hi, Bryan. Ready for both your sure guiding hand and your swift kick.
Yes, indeed, both of them. And in a shocking reversal, we'll have our genius producer, Palace Shaw, joining us on air to address your queer questions and quandaries. Palace, I hope your mic is very hot because it is cold as fuck where we live this week.
Yes, it's on, and I'm so excited to be here with you both. The only part of my body that has touched the cold air is like the top half of my face. I am like sufficiently wrapped up.
Excellent work.
I've been wearing like my beanies in the house. It's like that serious. So
yeah, I'm a big balaclava person.
Ooh, yeah, very nice.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, we're all trying to keep warm, so maybe we should do that in part by getting to these letters because they are juicy and spicy. We've got a rich set for our listeners today, including awkward hookup app encounters, an ugly painting, and a classic lesbian clusterfuck of exes and mistresses and friends. We will dig into all of those after a short break.
More Chumba Casino fan mail. Love this. It says, Dear Ryan, I love Chumba Casino. They're so much fun. I love the wild ride from the social slots to the slingo to jackpots quicker than a 6-time real spin. Everybody's finding their fun at Chumba Casino. Why don't you find out for yourself? Head to ChumbaCasino.com and enjoy hundreds of casino-style games for free with your welcome bonus. Sponsored by Chumba Casino. No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 18 plus terms and conditions apply.
This episode is brought to you by Shopify. Upgrade your business with Shopify, home of the #1 checkout on the planet. Shop Pay boosts conversions up to 50%, meaning fewer carts going abandoned and more sales going cha-ching. So if you're into growing your business, get a commerce platform that's ready to sell wherever your customers are. Visit Shopify.com to upgrade your selling today.
All right, we're back. Before we get into it, I just wanted to note that attentive Slate advice mavens may recognize a few of these letters from our regular columns like Dear Prudence and How to Do It. If you don't read those already, you should definitely do that. I edit some of them and would love to have you there. There are great answers over there naturally, but we thought we could add some specifically queer perspective and zest. So let's get into it.
I'm a newly divorced bisexual dad who's moved to a city adjacent to my 20-year-old son's college. He's extremely shy and hasn't talked about sex with me in years. He identifies as queer, but has provided no more detail than that. How do I broach the subject of my being on dating apps? I'm not ashamed of any public postings I've made, but still, encountering your dad's profile must be jarring. I know we can block each other, but that still requires discussion and coordination. Are either one of us at risk of dying of embarrassment during this?
This is a mess. What do we think for new app dad?
I mean, to directly answer that question, yes. The answer is certainly yes. That is a risk that you're taking.
That they will die.
Oh, absolutely. I think that you shouldn't just be thinking about apps. You should also be thinking about the fact that you might run into each other at a queer event or a gay bar or even, see each other canoodling around town. Not even to mention play parties or something like that.
Oh my God.
Depending on how big the city is, it could be a small community. So I just want to start out by laying out the full range of embarrassing locations that y'all could run into each other. But I think it's worth absolutely broaching this with your son. My advice to this dad who just recently moved would be take a proactive approach. And although the conversation with your son would be awkward, it's much better to sort of lay out the possibility ahead of time and say, you don't need to tell me whether you're on any of these apps, but FYI, I will be. And if you want to talk about it, that's fine. And, obviously, as soon as we see each other, we can block each other. I think on most of these apps, you can sort of do that, like, don't show me this person again or whatever.
Yeah.
I also think, and you guys might disagree, but I think that the dad should also consider keeping his profile less explicitly sexual until they can block each other. Because it's one thing to see your dad's dating profile. It's another to see, like, I'm a kinky bottom who, is hungry for your dirty Yeah, exactly. Like, I don't want to sex shame or slut shame anybody.
No.
But there are certain considerations you have to make when you're a parent. And I think that would be a small price to pay to sort of protect your son from that, to prevent something from going from embarrassing to kind of traumatizing.
Absolutely.
What do you guys think?
Yeah. It's so funny. You're so wise, Christina.
Oh my God,
I feel kind of silly because I was like kind of ambivalent at first, just because I was like, he's in college. If he sees it, he'll be like, ew, block, and move on. Maybe he has the skills to just be like, yeah, okay. I also am like, so does your son know you're bisexual? Maybe he's surprised to see you there, but not shocked. Maybe for all of the reasons that you said, Christina, and maybe a few more, it's just worth having that conversation. And maybe it's broader than just like, you might see my abs on the internet. Maybe it's, just talking about like where you're at. I don't know. Sometimes those conversations can feel kind of like mortifying to have with your parents, but depending on the relationship that you want to this stuff, I think that's like what should inform what you do.
Mm-hmm. It's also, I think therapists, like on their dating profiles, they'll be like, if you're my client and you see this, like, feel free to bring it up in our session. You might see this. If you want, we can talk about it, or we don't have to.
Yeah.
Son, if you see this, send me a text. It's like dad versus daddy identity. It's like such a hard line.
Yeah.
Such a hard line.
Christina, I like what you said about the parent having maybe a little more responsibility here. I think that's a good point. And the fact that, it sounds like you moved, letter writer, you moved to this place. Your son was already there. So in a way, you're kind of coming into his turf, so to speak. And so, I think you do probably, like we've been saying, want to be a little more demure and mindful maybe in your presentation. Maybe you're not on sniffies, but you are on like dating apps. I don't know. I don't want to like police people's sexual self-expression or romantic self-expression for that matter. But I do think there's probably, a little bit more of a onus placed on the father. In terms of the conversation, we hear that the son is shy here, extremely shy. So that granted, it's probably going to be difficult. My feeling about this was that you should bring it up and, sort of invite the conversation, do it gently, don't sort of surprise him, all those good sort of conversation etiquette things. But then maybe offer to sort of do the blocking right then and there. I think that might, like, if this is a big concern for both of you and you hear that from your son, maybe there's a way to just like quickly trade phones and be like blocking me, blocking you, and like have it done.
Can you do that without having seen that person sort of organically pop up?
I think I don't really use a lot of apps anymore, but I believe you can kind of search for yourself, I think, basically. Like if you knew the name of your profile.
Like on Tinder?
Yeah, maybe. In Grindr, it feels like I think you can do that.
I guess I've never used Grindr.
But I could be, listeners will tell us if that's totally untrue. But I think you could probably find a way. Also, if it's location based, you would be in the same room anyway.
Yeah.
So you would find yourself, quickly block it, give the phone back, and be done.
That's a great idea.
That would be my kind of practical minded like approach. But it may be that your son doesn't want to show you his phone. Like that opens its own can of worms. So I guess maybe what we're all saying is, is, that there should be a conversation, or a sort of preemptive conversation, but maybe that you're going to have to kind of feel it out with your kid to see what that's going to look like and what the solution is going to look like.
Yeah, and maybe develop this into a limited series television show that I would definitely watch. Letter number 2.
My daughter, who is 15, is transgender. She's getting gender-affirming care and thriving. Most of our family is supportive. My problem is with my nephew. My sister and I have always been close. My daughter is about 2.5 years younger than her son, and they've never been able to play or interact with each other. At Thanksgiving 4 years ago, my daughter was 11 and my nephew was 14. My nephew went on a rant about how he hates transgender people, how they are everywhere, and how they should be eliminated. No one said anything to him but me. I asked him if he had ever even met a transgender person, and when he said, "I don't have to meet one to know they're bad," I just moved on to avoid getting into an argument with him. His father, my brother-in-law, loves it when his kids are outrageous, so he eggs them on. My daughter had not yet come out as trans at this point. She came out about a year later, but she had a vivid memory of this scene, and it was the reason she didn't want to tell the rest of our family for another year. She had me tell my sister because she was scared of their family's reaction. When I told my sister, she seemed okay, so I asked about my nephew, reminding her about his Thanksgiving rant. First, she acted like it had never happened and said she had no memory of it. Then, she told me that her son doesn't hate transgender people. He hates the hype of trans people. I asked what hype, and she explained that trans people are in the news all the time now. Everyone is saying they are trans for attention nowadays. It's all hype, hype, hype. She then refused to discuss it anymore. The end result is my daughter doesn't really feel safe with my sister's family. My sister hosts a lot of holidays because she has a big house, and my daughter refuses to go. She will grudgingly go if the get-togethers are at my parents' house, even if my sister's family is there, because she feels safer at my parents' house. My sister is annoyed because if my daughter doesn't go, neither do I. I'm not going to leave my daughter home alone on a holiday to hang out with my sister's kids. I feel like we need to have another conversation about her son's rant about trans people and her dismissiveness. My nephew, who now knows that my daughter is trans, has never said he didn't mean it or reversed his opinion, much less apologized. So I think it's pretty unreasonable for anyone to think my daughter should be comfortable hanging out around this kid anywhere, but especially on his territory. Unfortunately, my sister thinks her kids do no wrong and manages to twist everything until you apologize to her. This conversation cannot go that way. I owe it to my daughter to be firm about this. So what do I say, and how do I say it? I've reached out to various LGBTQIA groups I'm part of for advice, but most advised cutting off contact because there wasn't an immediate acknowledgement of responsibility for being hurtful, an apology, and a willingness to do better. I don't want to cut contact with my sister without at least attempting another conversation. I am notoriously bad at confrontation and inevitably end up backing down. Signed, It's Not Hype.
Oof.
Ooh, yeah.
This is a really, really hard one.
Mm-hmm.
I feel terrible for this teenage girl and for the parent.
Yeah, there's a lot in this letter that we can, I think, kind of dissect before we get to the answering the clear question, which is how do I have this conversation? I want to say the story, the way the letter is telling it, is that the nephew is transphobic, that, he's the one that said this really horrible thing, really scarred the daughter, clearly. I mean, I think it's really worth noting that it delayed her coming out by a year. Mm-hmm. I think that our listeners probably don't need to be told this, but this kind of thing happens all the time, I think. Just like a tossed off comment like that can really fuck up someone's life. And just especially teens and people who are sort of figuring out what their deal is. But I just want to point out that it's not just that nephew that's transphobic. It's everyone in that house is transphobic. Your sister is transphobic. The father is absolutely transphobic. He is the one that this is probably coming from. If I had to place money on it, I guarantee you, given that we have this line about, he loves it when his kids are outrageous and we engage and all that. That's coming from him. I don't know that an 11 or 14-year-old necessarily has the word eliminated in his vocabulary unless he's hearing talking points from...
Yeah, or is aware of what's hyped up in the culture.
Yeah. It's possible he could have gotten it online, but I bet, if I had to bet, it's coming from the dad. So speaking to the letter writer, it's I know you don't want to cut off your sister and you think that there's, you write as if there's some sort of redeeming qualities there in her, or maybe there's room to sort of, to I don't know, hash this out or get to a better place. I'm not sure. I think that the rhetoric in that household is probably a lot nastier than you or maybe you're imagining it is. So as we're discussing like what to do or whether you should cut off or not, I think I just wanted to start in that place.
Yeah, I think that's a really good note. At the same time, I'm very sensitive to the impulse that I think a lot of, especially sort of online commenters have, which is constantly telling people to cut off disrespectful family members, which I know can be a lot harder than it seems. You know, family means a lot to us, and it's possible that family, maybe not the sister's family, but, you know, the grandparents and other people are really important support systems. And hanging out with them also means involving this other transphobic part of the family. And so I certainly don't think that that's the only avenue here for the letter writer. I think a first step might be asking her daughter what she wants, whether it's important for her to get an apology, whether she feels like she's missing out and is sad about the fact that she can't go to holidays at her aunt's house, or whether she wants to completely avoid having the conversation, because I think she needs to be a part of the conversation. I think it can't just be between the two sisters, because the person responsible for this rant is now 18, you know, and even if he was younger, like, he's still responsible for his actions and needs to be part of whatever, you know, step forward happens. And also the person who was harmed was your daughter. So I feel like taking cues from her and what her goals are should be the first step.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that she is really the starting point. And I think that I understand that the advice about cutting off contact is really hard to hear, but the parents saying like they're sort of like conflict averse and not good with confrontation. And so it's like, if you can't hold your own for her, then, you know, I do think that lessening contact is probably the right way to go. If he's like deep in, you know, some sort of algorithm that, you know, has made him sort of staunch in this view, I don't know how much like education is going to actually make a change, right? I don't know. It's a very difficult situation.
I mean, I think if it feels to the daughter that, you know, she wants to try to have some sort of repair with this family, then the way to approach it would be, I've heard this from political activists, and I think it's true in interpersonal interactions too, to kind of make clear ahead of time that we're not going to be writing you off as some sort of, you know, unreachable, unrepentant bigot if you come to the table and apologize and change your mind and change the way you act. You know, like, there is a path forward here for forgiveness and kind of reinstating the wholeness of this family.
You know, one version of a possible solution that I had thought of was like, it's possible if you, letter writer, don't want to cut off your sister entirely, you can have that relationship sort of completely separate from your kid, right? You can see them separately and talk to them separately. That doesn't necessarily, you know, that doesn't solve exactly the problem of like, what do they believe about your child? But there is a way, like, what I'm most concerned about, I think, is minimizing further harm to this child. I think, you know, I personally have searing memories of things like that being said around me about faggots, like, when I was a child. Like, I can think of like a handful of them that still echo in my mind and definitely sort of, I think, delayed my coming out and things like in exactly this way. That stuff is really traumatic. And I think being, you know, forced or you know, made to sort of be around those people, even in a sort of a secondary place like the grandparents' home, is I'm going to say re-traumatizing. I think it's just really, really dangerous. So I would want to be sure that we're giving, like you said, I think, Christina, giving room for the daughter to be honest about whether she can handle that or wants that. And then I think our letter writer has to be really, you know, really listen to that and be really cognizant of how it's, you know, for the letter writer, it was like a thing that was sort of tossed off at an event some years ago. It was bad. Like, for this child, it's like, something much bigger than that. I think we have to be real sensitive to that. And, you know, I just lean toward this being very, very difficult. Like, I don't know that the daughter should be around them at all, until some kind of change is communicated. And, you know, making that change is, you know, there's various ways to try that, like we've been saying. But I would say, you know, maybe you don't cut them all off yourself, but you definitely get your daughter out of there if that's what she definitely wants.
Man, yeah, all the best to this teenager and her family.
All right, we are going to take a short break, and then we will be back with a few more letters.
All right, we're back with another letter. This, I have to say, is one of the more idiosyncratic, really one-of-a-kind issues that I imagine will not apply to any of our listeners, and that makes me even more excited to talk about it.
A few months before we broke up, my ex's mom painted a really ugly portrait of me. She did her best, but I think she was used to very feminine models, which I very much am not, and was trying out a new stylistic experiment. Like, I understand she put hours of labor into it, and you know, I was really excited and grateful when I opened it, even while inwardly despairing at where the hell I was gonna put it. I felt like it had to be displayed so as not to hurt her feelings, but I also didn't want my guests to have my big bug eyes following them around the room, which, to be fair to the artist, I do have big weird eyes, IRL. Half of the ugly, not her fault. I'm not conventionally attractive, though I am hot to a specific kind of queer, and usually fine with that. So what do I do here? I tried to give it back, but was told it's a gift. I tried, but you worked so hard, and it's a great piece, and would you want it for a portfolio? But no dice. I'm storing it in a relative's basement while I try to find a place post-breakup. I can't pitch it. That was somebody's hard work. I doubt a thrift store would want it, and even if I liked it, I don't want my face on the wall. Help. Signed, sitcom B-plot bullshit.
This is so funny. Yeah, my instinct is actually to not talk about it, but to also, okay, this is your ex's mom. So this is not somebody that you're going to be dealing with going forward. And I think it's very polite to accept their no's, but you don't have to do that. I'm like, do you know where she lives? Could you wrap it really nicely? Leave it on her porch with a letter that's like, I can't bear to have this reminder of my relationship with XYZ. And though I think it is a beautiful piece, I think it is better.
Oh my God, tell it.
Thank you so much for understanding during this hard time. Love,
That is genius level. I love making it about the personal pain.
Okay, I feel extremely differently, which is that you have no responsibility to this person or this painting at all. Absolutely throw it out. This is not the work of a celebrated artist that has some sort of historic or cultural value. It's an amateur artist's portrait of you that you don't like, and you're not in relationship with this person anymore. Throw it out if you want. And also, though, I disagree that a thrift store wouldn't want it. There are ugly pictures of people that are sold in antique stores and thrift stores all the time. I have artworks in my home depicting things and people that aren't particularly attractive, but it's artistically interesting. Somebody once bought, when I had a stoop sale, a sort of acquaintance of mine bought a self-portrait that I drew my freshman year in college in my first ever drawing class because she thought it looked interesting. It was in a pad of paper that I was selling the rest of the pad of paper, and she's like, I'm going to buy this portrait of you. Which sounds a little creepy when I say it, but it wasn't. Sell it at your own stoop sale. Someone else might want it.
That's a really good point about the thrift store. I think the junkier side of the antique stores or thrift stores that have weird stuff like that. Yeah, I totally buy art from there all the time. And it's like stuff that clearly people thought was trash, right? Or was ugly. And to me, it's an aesthetic addition to my home. But I also agree with you, Christina. I think you can throw it away. I think, and I'm going to give you like an etiquette point in favor of that. Giving art to someone as a gift is presumptuous and always risky. It is not something that is advised. I think in sort of classic etiquette, it presumes too much about what they want in their space and what their style is and all of that. So if you do it, you have to do it with the knowledge that they may, in fact, politely accept it and then throw it away or put it in a closet or sell it, because you can't impose your idea of style or beauty or whatever onto them and in their space. So I think, if like the Emily Post of it all is of concern to this letter writer, I think it's in your favor there. And it's a gift. When you give a gift, you cannot like the gifter cannot like have any ownership over what the giftee does. That is the nature of gifts. In addition to the fact that this is an ex, you don't need to see this woman ever again. You are also in the clear, I think, just in terms of practical etiquette.
What a fun scenario.
Yeah, don't be staring at a picture all day that makes you mad. Like that's terrible. Get rid of it.
Burn it.
Burn it. Burn it. Yeah. That's our advice. Burn it. All right. Here is our final letter for this episode. And it is a real, to me anyway, a real complex one. Let's see.
I'm a divorced queer woman in my 40s. Our marriage was unhealthy, and we ultimately got divorced after I had an affair. Fast forward a few years, and my ex-wife and I have forged a solid friendship. Since our divorce, we've supported each other through the deaths of parents and other serious life changes. I consider her one of my best friends, and when I meet new potential partners, I am fully open about our strictly platonic relationship. But here's where it gets complicated. I've also developed a close friendship with the woman I cheated on her with. After our affair, we realized we actually like each other as people. There's no chance of a romantic future between us. We spend a lot of time together, and what happened in the past is firmly in the past. How much do I need to disclose about all of this to future partners? Do my future partners need to know our history? Is it morally incumbent on me to disclose that she was the woman I cheated on my wife with? I've always felt I should be fully open about everything, but as this fades further into the past, do my new partners need to know this level of detail? I think I'd want to know if it were me.
This seems a little bit like a non-problem to me. Mm-hmm. I think it is highly normal and even expected that queer women will stay friends with their exes, and that many friends in their lives were at one point hookups, lovers, or partners of some breed. And I also think that we're all adults at this point and can recognize that relationships sometimes end in complicated and unflattering and regrettable ways. And yeah, when you're talking about your history, you can say, my last relationship or whatever, this one partner I had, it was a really bad relationship. I behaved poorly. I regret it, and it ended because I had an affair, or however you want to explain it, but in a way that shows, you're self-aware and you recognize that what you did was wrong. And I don't think that will turn many people off like unequivocally from dating you, but it's certainly something you want to be honest about. And then I think you only want to explain that, oh yeah, this is the woman I had an affair with, to the extent that it's relevant to your conversation. So, if you're explaining how you know people, you could be like, oh yeah, in private, preferably not in front of this third person who you had an affair with. Yeah, just to say, oh yeah, that was the person who I was seeing, when so-and-so and I broke up. I think the fact that you're still friends with your ex that you cheated on also reflects well on your character and the way that relationship ended. So I don't think this is something to be super concerned about at all. But I do think that it warrants telling, not so much in a disclosure sense, but in terms of just being honest about your life and your relationship sense and how you know people.
Yeah, I feel like all of this information kind of comes out organically over time as you're dating somebody. And I think at the beginning, they are both exes, and as it slips further into the past, like, yes, one might be an ex-wife, one might be an ex-mistress, but are y'all in the same room together often?
Right.
Do you hang out with both of them? Like, is this a friend group? Or, because I think that's the only situation in which, like, if there's some, like, weird unnamed tension because all three of you are there and so is a new partner, then, like, yeah, maybe you should explain why things are a little tense. But if that's not happening, they're exes until there's more of a relationship there and you start getting to know the person. I think it's very normal.
This is good to hear. I think I interpreted this to be more complex than it was. I think
well, this is why we're here to offer the queer women's perspective.
Yeah,
Bryan.
exactly. No, totally. Exactly. No, school me. The final note that our letter writer leaves, which is I think I would want to know if it were me, made me wonder. You know, in some ways, it's like their feelings that matter the most in terms of, like, if this is eating at them or introducing weird vibes into their new relationship, then it feels like, you know, right, that you have to say something. But I think you've both given good scripts and sort of approaches for how to do that. I don't know. I think, what did I want to say? I think it also just depends on who the new partner is, right? Like, and what their comfort level with past, you know, as you said, I was aware that, you know, queer women have much more robust friendship networks and things after relationships. And I think that's a wonderful thing, you know, but, you know, I think it depends on who the new person is. If you think that they would be shocked to find out that you're hanging out with the affair partner and that would offend their sensibilities, then that matters more, right? So I guess it's kind of about sussing them out as to whether you can just kind of leave it vague and just they are exes or not. But yeah, I think just pay attention to that. But it's probably not as big of a deal as I thought it was.
Yeah. It's a good point that I don't want to paint the community with too broad a brush. And certainly there are people who are more sensitive to that fact, which is why I think it's important when, you know, you're explaining how you know people to say, like, yes, we were in a relationship. And the fact that you met somebody through an affair, yeah, it might in some circumstances feel like jarring to come across that information later in the game. But I think the key is, you know, when it comes up, aka probably when this person meets somebody or when they come up in conversation, to just share the information like it's not a big deal, because at this point it isn't. You're friends with both people. There's no drama there. And so I think if you present it in a non-dramatic way, it will be received that way.
All right. I think that is all of the advice we have to give for today. We'll probably be doing this occasionally going forward when we sense a real dire need in the community for our advice. So if you have a question, let us know. You can send them to outwardpodcast@slate.com. Obviously open to just about anything, queer relationship dynamics, friendships, work decisions, nosy family, all of that. So please let us know if you're having any issues. That's it for the main show today, but there's always more Outward over in the Slate Plus feed. This week, Palace will stay on mic to help us update the gay agenda. If you're not already a subscriber, remember that by joining Slate Plus, you'll get ad-free podcasts, extra segments on all of our shows, and you'll never hit a paywall on the Slate site. Subscribe now on Apple Podcasts by clicking Try Free at the top of the Outward show page, or visit slate.com/outwardplus to get access wherever you listen. Otherwise, please send us topic ideas and feedback to outwardpodcast@slate.com. Our show is produced, as you know, by the terribly wise Palace Shaw. If you like Outward, please subscribe in your podcast app, tell your friends about it, rate and review, all that good stuff, so everybody can join in with us. Until next time, stay gay, everybody.
Stay gay, Bryan.
I will.
Bye.